Hey everyone, it's Rabbi Shmuel Pollan back with you for another episode of the Light Unto the Nations show. Let me remind you, we have a book for sale that you must get. Read all about it at allinforgod.com. That's allinforgod.com. You will thoroughly enjoy this book. It will help you with doubts about your life and about the Bible and about God's existence and so much more. Let's read what someone had to say about this book that's on the back of the book. I laughed, I cried, and I was scared for my life as I felt many of my old paradigms falling apart, but I came out unscathed and on a high. This book is a roller coaster, and this book is historic. It makes the case for God in the modern world like no book ever I have read, and the writing is fantastic. It's better than I can express in words. Just read it. So that's the book All In for God. Pick that up and let me know what you think of it. We're going to talk today about self-sacrifice, which is one of the main secrets behind being all in for God is self-sacrifice. But some people don't think that self-sacrifice is a healthy thing. So Hasidic philosophy, Jewish philosophy, which in my view is the authority on personal development, speaks early and often about the idea of self-sacrifice. It says this is actually the core concept that underlies our happiness. But self-sacrifice doesn't sound happy in the least. It sounds hard, and to modern ears, it may even sound unhealthy. What does Hasidic philosophy, the Kabbalah, know here that we don't know? Rather than a nice gradual introduction to the wonders of self-sacrifice, I thought it would be more fun to work from the opposite direction. Let's start with the most gutsy story of self-sacrifice of all time. The story in the Bible that makes mothers around the world cringe. The one people blame on Satan himself, which is a possibility, in my opinion. But at a surface level, the self-sacrifice called for here was asked for by God himself. I'd like to start with that and work backwards. And in case you haven't guessed it, I'm talking about the binding of Isaac on Har Moriah by his father Abraham. I assume you are aware of God's shocking request of Abraham in Genesis 22. How in the world could God ask his beloved son Abraham to take a knife and sacrifice his beloved firstborn son Isaac? If we can explain how this was in any way healthy, I think we can explain anything. First off, damage control. Yes, this happened, but let's get our facts straight. Many picture a fair, young, tender boy being brought to the altar. Isaac was actually 37 years old at the time and fully aware of what was happening and agreeable to it. So even if you were one of those vociferous detractors who considered this to be an attempted murder, it would also have to be considered an attempted suicide by Isaac. That adds a little calm, but there's the spoiler alert which should bring even more calm, and that is that Abraham does not actually sacrifice his son in the end. He sacrifices an animal substitute. So I suppose we could say all's well that ends well, right? Well, not for most people. This story is still extremely troubling, as it should be. Just try to decipher this sentence that follows to see how odd this story actually is. Here's the sentence. A loving God commands a loving Abraham, the chief crusader against pagan child sacrifices, to child sacrifice his most beloved son, who would have kept all of Abraham's anti-child sacrifice work alive. This couldn't be wrong. This couldn't be more wrong in every single way. Sounds to me like something that would come from Satan's side of the flagpole. But assuming this was God, forgive me, but what was he smoking? Why command something so evil, so against everything he and Abraham had been fighting for? Just a moment. The revulsion will probably continue even after this explanation, as it should. But if you're interested in another spin on the story, here we go. First, let's notice we use the word evil above. We should have a chat about good and evil. What is good? What is evil? Where in all the atoms that we're made up of do we find these labels? We don't. They don't exist in the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, or the animal kingdom. And if they exist for humans at all, is there a clear line somewhere between the two? Anywhere? You've got to admit, when it comes to good and evil, it's always going to depend on who you ask. Me, Bin Laden, Putin. You'll get radically different definitions. You would think child sacrifice is where we draw the line. That's something we can all agree is evil, right? But you'd be wrong. Abraham was given a name by the people around him, the Ivri. That basically means he was the only guy in the world who was against paganism. Paganism held child sacrifice ceremonies as casually as Yankees games. You know how Al Gore is the face of the Stop Global Warming movement? Abraham, who is more so the face of the Stop Child Sacrifice movement, Abraham was more so the face of the Stop Child Sacrifice movement. Now God has allegedly just asked him to do a child sacrifice of his own. God knows what we just said. He knows that good and evil are relative if they exist at all. He knows he made up those words. So what God seems to be doing is having fun playing with these labels, right? He says, look at that. You think you know good and evil? Think again. I can do a switcheroo with just one single command. And it's true. He can. They are his words, not ours. In an effort to understand why God may have done this morality mismatch, or as I call it, the switcheroo, I thought back to my college days on the debate team. I once had to argue a position that I was to adopt for 10 minutes. With passion, I showed how it was right, moral, and good from every conceivable angle, and I really believed it too. My opponent did the same. Then the teacher says, now switch cards, take your opponent's position for another 10 minutes. The horror. It was really hard to sacrifice everything I just stood for a moment ago, but I had no choice. I was commanded. We did it with just the same passion as the first time. If I may say so, after that sacrifice, we came out true debaters. Maybe God wanted to know if Abraham was a true servant. So he said, do you see those enemies over there all around you? The ones you spend every day crusading against? I want you to become one of them. Just for a day. For one day, I want you to become those sinners that you keep trying to change. Step into their shoes. See what it feels like to do what they do. Abraham got the message, and seconds later, he was prepping it all with the very same excitement as everything he did for God, just like we argued the opinions with passion for 10 minutes against the opinion we had taken before. And that proved more than any of his challenges that he was real, that he was truly committed to God, that he was all in for God, and not his own beliefs about God, as holy as they may have been, and regardless of how much time and energy he had put into them. Imagine how excited you are to admit that you were wrong about anything. Abraham did it for everything. His past, his present, his future, his son, and all that he stood for. In seconds and with a passion, he taught us like no other human being ever has what it means to truly commit to someone or something. When he did that, he unlocked a part of our hearts that we can all now access. We all have our sticking points that hold us back from fully serving God, our spouse, or any family member. Well, that's why God made this story. It wasn't for Abraham. God knew Abraham would do it. It was actually for you to look at the story and realize you are capable of giving incredibly more than you think, loving incredibly more than you think, and sacrificing incredibly more than you think. And it's easy now because he already did it. He's your forefather, and it's in your genes. I have no proof, but I believe that Abraham's campaign continued after this event, but with a world of difference. The difference of having been in your enemy's shoes. Maybe he didn't hold his beliefs high up over them with the same high and mightiness. Maybe he looked a little bit less at the sin and a little more at the person behind the sin. And maybe he touched more people that way. I don't know, but I think so, because God has just shown him in the most graphic way possible that you just as easily could have been him, and nobody would have known the difference. God says, focus a little less on the battle and a little more on whose battle it is. Who are you really fighting for labels or for me? We should all ask that question to ourselves. So now I ask you, is self-sacrifice healthy? Here's my take. If I hire someone, the number one quality I'm looking for is probably the number one quality you should look for in a spouse. It's one word: change. Do they change their habits? If I see someone who can, I know it's a superstar, guaranteed. But how many of us don't change and don't even want to think about changing our habits? We even have developed jokes around this problem as if it's funny. Well, being a creature of your habits your entire life is a lot more sad than funny. And change and self-sacrifice are different words for the same thing. The more you can give up of yourself, i.e., the more you can change, the more you have to give to others. You want to learn a skill? Let's say it's magic. Are you going to stay the same and make that hobby fit into your schedule? Or are you going to sacrifice the TV shows that you enjoy to practice that craft for 2 hours every day at the very same time? Which will be making money soon with a healthy audience? Which person will be happier? So call it self-sacrifice or call it a willingness to change for another person or a cause, but there's nothing more healthy you could possibly do. In fact, it's a shortage of self-sacrifice that's keeping people from going to the gym and visiting our parents more and giving our spouse more of the blanket. It's true. It's the core of happiness and health. But what about me, you say? I hear it all the time. I don't even take care of myself properly. I don't make space for my own needs. There's no question. You have to take care of yourself. Always take care of yourself. You are a person too, and nobody will do it for you. But according to Hasidic philosophy, you still need to do self-sacrifice at all times, even when you're taking care of yourself. Because you take care of yourself not selfishly, you take care of yourself so you can get beyond yourself as soon as humanly possible. We all have to lace up our sneakers. Somebody out there is doing it to look good, and somebody out there is doing it so you can give it all up for the team. I know which one will win that game. Same shoes, different attitude, different results. The one who acts selflessly will always win the day, financially, romantically, and emotionally. So why keep focusing on what makes me happy and start focusing on how to be a true servant of God, a true servant of your spouse? Be someone who is ready to change anything at any time for who you love, because you, like Abraham, have self-sacrifice as your highest priority. God bless. But before we say God bless, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, hit the bell, and comment and let me know what you thought about what I had to say. And now, for real, God bless.